It's game day for the Arizona Coyotes, the first game following the NHL trade deadline. They play host to the Seattle Kraken. We're going to talk about that game and how we think it's going to go down on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes.
Your Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Robyn Leonio. That's Carl Pavlik. This is Locked On Coyotes. Today's episode brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them that Locked On sent you. We also want to thank everybody for making Locked On Coyotes your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. And of course, a thanks to those who tuned in yesterday on our live show as we discussed the trade deadline. It was a fun discussion, and at the end we compared rebuilding teams. And Carl, you brought up the Seattle Kraken, an interesting way of doing that because they play each other today.
Yep. I'd like to say that I planned that. I did not, but it's just a nice little coincidence. One thing that we didn't mention is after the deadline, after our episode, it was announced that the Coyotes had sent Riley Nash to the Tampa Bay Lightning for future considerations. Not sure what that is yet. Haven't seen any word.
Bag of
But
pucks.
I think it's money, so probably like $1. Very interesting end for Riley Nash's time with the Coyotes, acquired as a waiver pickup, sent back to the team that waived him. Who kind of foresaw that happening?
I mean, it's kind of like there's no really loser in that case because it's just like, hey, you just moving around again. That's all it is.
Maybe Nash spent a little bit more time in the desert than he would have liked, but he would have gone to the AHL, so it's not like it did any harm to his stats sheet. Um, I, I liked him as a player. I never thought he really clicked with the Coyotes, but he is gone now. Back to Tampa Bay. Best of luck to him. Hope he does well in his career.
Absolutely. But let's get talking about today's game. Arizona Coyotes and Seattle Kraken. Two teams that are completely rebuilding, and we know that. Well, the Kraken are building, not rebuilding, because they're expansion team.
Yep.
They did not get the luxury of creating a superstar team off the expansion draft like Vegas did.
I mean,
they had the opportunity to, they just didn't.
Yeah, when you say they didn't get the luxury, I take a mild offense to that because I do think the Kraken were put in a position to be a lot better than they are now.
I mean, I think the rest of the NHL wanted to make sure they didn't make the same mistakes they did against Vegas, so that led Seattle to be like, okay, they should be at least a mid-tier to bubble playoff team because they're in because they're in the Pacific Division, they should probably make the playoffs. That's what our thought process was before all this went down. And then they drafted who they drafted, and then it was like, what?
Yeah, they drafted who they drafted. They didn't make a lot of trades, which was definitely the big thing that Vegas did that I think everyone was kind of surprised that Seattle didn't do. Like, even with GMs being like, oh, you're not going to fleece us this time, expansion team. There's absolutely some GMs who would fall for that. They could have done more, I believe, in the lead up to it. And now they're just kind of they've shipped out a lot of their players, so they're probably going to be not great down the stretch. But very rarely are the Coyotes in a trap game where they're not the trap, because I am always very concerned when you see a bunch of younger players who are hungry, with an opportunity. What are they going to do, especially against a team like the Coyotes? That's potentially pretty dangerous. There's a lot of kind of room on that roster, like the Coyotes, for if you have something to show it.
Absolutely. you mentioned some of the players like what the Kraken did during their trade deadline, and it's really interesting. Like I think you have it up or whatever, and what they did, and I want to hear about that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so I pulled a couple of the trade websites to kind of get the full scope. The important things that I would say, especially for today's game, gone are Mason Appleton, Colin Blackwell, Mike Giordano, Cal Yarcroc, Marcus Johansson, and Jeremy Lazan. And in are Daniel Sprong and Victor Rask, and just a buttload of picks, mostly in the second, third, and fourth rounds. So definitely a lot of turnover for the Kraken, um, especially compared to the Coyotes, who didn't really see too much leave.
I'm looking at the uh, acquisition of Victor Rask, and his name is actually obviously because um, he got sent down to non-roster, so it's technically buried penalty. So it's like
Mm,
just essentially they just picked up his contract.
yeah, yeah. He was a very late acquisition, kind of like the Riley Nash. I don't think we talked about this, but there was reports that there were still 33 trades like that needed to be processed at the end of the trade deadline, which is high, very high.
Let's go back and blame to what you were saying during that trade episode, and that's why do people still use fax?
um, I in my old job with the Harlem Globetrotters, we did a lot of business with smaller venues. And those were the people who always used fax still. Like they didn't like the idea of email for orders or anything like that because email, like we like to think it's instantaneous. It really isn't. Things get like trapped in folders. All kinds of unexpected stuff happens. A fax is reliable in a way that email isn't. It has a lot of disadvantages, but it has a couple advantages.
It
Either
is
way,
direct, but
yeah, it's direct. It's almost instantaneous, and you have like a physical copy of your paper. In a way that like email doesn't. Email tends to get lost. And I don't know if the NHL actually uses fax. We've never seen video of like the trade center on that end. If it's like just a person like waiting at a desk and be like, oh, okay, Kraken have acquired Victor Rask, and then just put that on a chalkboard somewhere. But either way, it's a weird system.
all I know is when they talked about the trade deadline is as long as it was submitted
Yep.
before that 3 p.m. Eastern time, noon our time here in Arizona, then yeah, it counted. But I'm just wondering is what counts as submitted? How did it get submitted? And no, we didn't know about it. Like,
Yeah, and that's kind of where like if you have a fax machine, like it has a timestamp on when it was sent and when it's
hmm
received. So it could be something like that. I know Greg Wyshynski posted a ESPN bingo card, and one of the spots was 3 deals after the trade deadline going through.
that
Um,
definitely happened.
yeah, because it's something that we've come to expect every single year. There's a trade or two that's after the deadline. It seems like teams were just like waiting until the very last minute to do anything though, which that's the part I'm kind of interested in. Like, why was it so late?
It is fun though. It is fun when that happens because that's when everyone's like, "Oh my god."
And if you wait till the last minute, you occasionally get problems. Hello, Vegas.
Oh, well, that might be a discussion for another time if necessary.
Yeah, there'll be a nice, fun, like end of the year discussion that we can have. And then I was talking to one of the runners of an Edmonton Oilers blog on Twitter yesterday, and just kind of bringing up the fact that they are waiting until the last minute. I love the idea that someone called the Edmonton Oilers a must-win window, or in a must-win window, and you're like, they do not act like that, and they do not
Yeah,
have the
no,
personnel for that. Are you saying it just because McDavid and Draisaitl? Because that's that's been they've been on the team for years now. You'd think they'd figure it out, but they haven't. So maybe they're not in the window.
Probably not. We still do got more to get to though on this episode of Locked On Coyotes. We're going to talk about, well, we're going to talk about the more of the game. Plus, we're going to get to our picks. That's going to be later in the episode. All coming up in just a moment. But first, a quick word from sponsors.
So I have a message from our friends at Bet Online. It's that time of year again, as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. For all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and information. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's where we go to look at our stats for this episode, and you'll be hearing from BetOnline a little bit later. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
So back here on Locked On Coyotes, once again, Robyn Leonio and Carl Pavlik. We are getting ready for the Arizona Coyotes hosting the Seattle Kraken. Two basement-level teams in the National Hockey League right now, up
Yep.
against each other. It's going to be a interesting game because, again, we do what we call tank-offs. Who's going to do worse? It's not like who's going to win. It's like who's going to do worse in this case. Sort of, though, taking a look at starting goaltenders because it's unconfirmed at this point, according to Daily Faceoff. But they're predicting a matchup between Philip Grubauer and Corell Vejmelka.
Doesn't surprise me. I'm a little bit surprised that Grubauer is still with the Kraken. Like that seems like a piece you could have moved at the trade deadline. Maybe not keep him around, but Vejmelka getting the start for the Coyotes is pretty expected.
I mean, you're not gonna put the new guy in right away. Like,
No, you're not going to put the new guy. You're not going to put the AHL call up. It's not like this is a back-to-back or anything. The Coyotes had a day off after playing San Jose. They have 2 days off before playing Calgary at the end of the week. So give the milk of the start. I mean, the Coyotes have yet to fall to the Kraken this year, so I think they have a pretty good shot at this one.
I think so too, right? That's so far they've played each other twice, and the Coyotes have won twice.
Mm-hmm.
Win tonight, and they sweep the Kraken.
Which it's so like crazy to me that we're talking about the Coyotes sweeping teams. Like we all knew that they were going to be that they were bad going into this year. And yet they've already swept the Maple Leafs, the Ottawa Senators, and the Montreal Canadiens. And they have a very real shot at sweeping the Seattle Kraken. That's just very kind of surprising.
It is, and again, because I think before the season began, when we were talking about board predictions and everything like that, that's when I was like, the Coyotes are on a collision course for a historically low point total. Which,
Mm-hmm.
if they keep up what they're doing this month, they're already going to pass what they did at the worst of the of their lowest point total of a
Yeah.
42 game season.
Uh, which I do think that the Coyotes were especially lucky this past month. I do
Mm-hmm.
not think their results were in any way sustainable, especially against the Ottawa and the Detroit games. Those aren't going to happen a lot. So I don't know if the Coyotes are going to finish like with their worst season ever, but I think it's going to be kind of close.
I think the worst was at 56 points, right? Um,
Is that
for
the
fluidity.
first
That
year
was
under
the
Tocchet?
2015, I think. 2014.
Uh,
Oh no, 20.
which
I think it was the year right before McDavid draft.
mm,
I think.
Either way, like I really don't know. There's 20 games left. We're in the home stretch. I am kind of excited for the season to be over. I'm not gonna lie. This year was pretty tiring, and there's just a lot of interesting things that could really happen next year. Like the Coyotes' big acquisitions during the trade deadline were related to college players, and McBain has signed an entry level deal with the team for 2 years. Another thing that hadn't happened yet when we were talking about that yesterday. And I'm excited to see him next year with Dylan Gunther, but in order for that to happen, this year needs to end. And I'm fine with this season ending as soon as possible.
And let's also go one other thing too that happened. I think well, it's something that we just missed to talk about, and that was an extension for Corell.
Yeah. Yes. There was rumors about that in the morning, and it hadn't been confirmed, I think, by the time we did the episode. So we didn't want to discuss it. But yeah, Karel Vejmelka, this will be his first game after being rewarded with a 3-year, 2 point something million deal.
2.7 about
2.7 per season, not total,
yes,
correct? Yeah.
2.7 per yeah.
Which really good pay increase for a guy who spent last year playing in the Czech second league.
I know, right?
It is, to me, it is very impressive seeing how far Karel Vejmelka has come in his career, and just kind of like what faith the Coyotes have put in him. I think that was a big reason why they felt comfortable trading Scott Wedgwood. It wasn't just that they can get something after acquiring him for nothing. It was they feel comfortable in at least one of their netminders, and that's great to see.
Absolutely, it absolutely is great to see. Um, Trying to think anything else that makes this. Is anything that to you that makes this matchup intriguing?
Hmm. Like I said earlier, the biggest thing that's going to stand out to me is the Kraken have like sent a message to their locker room that there is opportunity for people, and I am very curious about who is going to step up. And that says a lot about who you are as a player. And it's something that we've been seeing with the Coyotes all this year. So that's the big thing I'm going to be watching for. Just it feels like the Coyotes are going to be playing against themselves almost for tonight's game.
And that's probably what we're going to see. It's going to be an interesting game. We're going to get to the predictions though in just a moment. We're going to talk about who's favored, who, and how this game is going to go, and that's all we're going to be coming up in just a moment. But first, I'm going to tell you guys that this episode brought to you by Rock Auto. The ever-increasing number of makes and models is now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning? Is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? Well, wait. The person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and even in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 50 or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership when you can go to Rock Auto, a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, because their prices are reliably low for every customer and have everything you could possibly need. So I want you guys to check it out yourself, though. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck, and write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. And it's now time to get to our Bet Online picks of the game, Carl. It's not very often when we talk about betting and the Arizona Coyotes are favored. Here is one of those games. I believe this is only the third game all season long in which they are favored. And you're muted.
I can only remember 2 other games where the Coyotes were favorited, so there might be one that I'm missing, but yes, I believe this is the third.
I believe the first was against Montreal.
Hmm.
The first game I mentioned Montreal, and the second I think was the second game against Seattle.
I think so, yeah. Because the Coyotes like had beaten the Kraken the first time, they beat the Kraken the second time. It makes sense that like the third time the Coyotes are going to be the favorites.
Absolutely. The Arizona Coyotes are only point and a half favorites, but so it's not a lot at plus 225 though, so that could be enticing to your betting people.
Hmm.
Minus 110 on the money line for Seattle, and plus 100 for the. That's an interest. With that makes no sense. That's I'm gonna have to go into that for a sec. But total points at 6.
Okay.
That's an interesting one because money line favors Seattle. Point spread favors the Coyotes.
I mean, it's not like I said it makes sense that the Coyotes are the favorites, and I believe so, but they're not the overwhelming favorite, so it's not too surprising, I think, to see something kind of weird like that.
Well, I would have
But
expected at least like money line to be like a pick 'em, right? Where
yeah,
it'd be like where essentially it just doesn't really matter which one you pick. It's just like, oh, you're gonna get the same, odds either way.
yeah. I will say that based on the last 2 games, this is going to be a high scoring affair. The Coyotes have scored 5 goals in the last 2 games against the Kraken. Um, and last one was a bit tighter as a 5-2 win. One before that, 5-4. So I'm thinking that this one goes over.
This one's definitely going over,
Yeah.
based off of the way that these two teams are. And again, as you mentioned, the last time they played each other, and let's also go ahead and say the way the Coyotes have been playing all month long. Like March, they have the highest per game goal total, which
Yeah.
is what.
And like they're getting that from like individual players like having like good months. The Coyotes top line of Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, and Travis Boyd is doing well. Lawson Krause is playing extremely well. So like it's not a full team effort, which it's a double-edged sword. It could be that that gets stopped today if they're able to shut down the top line. Lawson Krause, they shut down the Coyotes offense. But it also just says to me that like the Coyotes' best players are playing their best, and that's what you want them to do. I'm gonna go 6-3 Coyotes on this one.
6-3 Coyotes. So you're taking the points for Arizona
Hmm.
because better money in that one. Better
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna say, ooh, and what do I want? What am I feeling? I'm gonna say 6-4 Coyotes.
Okay. Okay. Keeping
We
it tight, though.
Yeah, and I think it's empty netter at the
Yeah.
end.
See, I was also thinking an empty netter, but with a 2-goal lead. Either way, I just hope the Coyotes don't fall like they did against the Sharks. Like I thought that was a much better game than a lot of their wins, but they just kind of fell apart in the last 5 minutes, and I'm very concerned about that. Like this is still a fragile team that does not necessarily have a lot of confidence, justifiably so. Like I've been saying this year, uh, we really don't know what is going to be going on with Phil Kessel. He expected to be traded, I think, and he's a professional. He knows the game. He knows the business side of it too. So hopefully he doesn't come into the locker room with like pissed off and with a lot of like negative feelings that affect it. But you never know. Like this is potentially like a pretty disappointing time for him. And he has proven to be a part of the Coyotes offense, so that could be bad if he is off his game.
Yeah, I mean that is a good thing to bring up. I do think, I'm one to believe that I do believe that Phil Kessel is a professional, and he's been around the block for long enough to know about the business, as you said. I would very much hope that he is professional enough not to let that get to
Yeah.
him.
And I'm going to be honest, like I have had outside aspects of jobs affect my performance at jobs. Like I think we all have had that happen. So if it
Oh yeah.
does, it's not like he is like a terrible person or like that there's something wrong with him or they you should think of him differently. I don't think you should, but I think he has just been doing this one thing long enough that he can compartmentalize that, hopefully. And I mean, I said on Twitter yesterday, Kessel's the guy with 2 rings. I don't feel too bad that he doesn't get to go to a competitor again, but it does suck that he is not getting a chance to compete and show what he can do for what could be the last time. Um, and I have to imagine that it's also frustrating to not want to be wanted by other teams. That's gotta suck. So hopefully he takes it all in stride and has a phenomenal end to this year, and gets a contract for next year somewhere.
I'm sure he will be willing to go take the because he's been around for long enough. He'll be willing to take the veteran minimum at a place.
Yeah, yeah. He is 1 year older than me, so he is a very like long in the tooth player for an NHL player. They tend not to last all that long. So yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens because the trade deadline is a very big event. What I described it in the preview for this game is it's the start of the end of the season.
It is, and which is interesting because the trade deadline is a month later than I'm used to.
Yes, and there's still 20 games left to play. It's a lot, but it's kind of that first starting point. It's like, the start of preseason, like rookie development camp, is when you know that preseason's about to start. The trade deadline is just like, that means that the end is near.
Absolutely, but you have our predictions for today's game. Take that as you will,
Hmm.
and we'll see what happens. But for now, that's going to be it for this episode. We're going to talk more about the game afterwards. See what happened after the game. Plus, get ready for the rest of the week. Anything else that happens Arizona Coyotes news, that we here at Locked On Coyotes is your daily source for Arizona Coyotes topics. But thanks for everyone for joining us on today's episode. We hope you appreciated what you heard. If you did, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you've yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcast, including on YouTube. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, on Instagram at LockedOnCoyotes, and on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I'm personally at Robyn_Leonio. Carl Pavlik is Carl Pavlik FFH. Follow us, interact with us, ask us a question. We might answer right back or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.